Happy New Year, everybody. This is Morris Litica, and I wanted to start doing something a little bit different in the new year, which is to give a read along of the articles that I write, just in case you'd rather listen to this article instead of reading along. And since it's a new year, I want to talk about some of my reflections from the last year and goals. So here we go. Let's go inside a private practice of mine. The end of the year has always been a time of reflection and setting goals. I set aside some quiet time to examine what's worked, what hasn't, and what my goals are for the next year. And this time I will invite you with me. We filmmakers need to build together and put things in perspective. So I hope sharing this will help with that. Now, I want you to get ready because this is going to be a long one. I always start by looking backward. In 2024, much was accomplished, but also there was much left to be done. So let's dive in. This was my second year running the Blended Future Project as a registered LLC. The first year was, well, barely survivable. The second year, we managed and even made some progress both creatively and financially. And it ended up being the first year that 100% of my income came through my business, which is great. But also has its challenges. Now, we won't get into profit and loss overviews because this isn't a business newsletter, but I will say that officially creating a business has been extremely positive to my filmmaking career, simply because it makes you take it seriously, which helps you focus in the long term rather than simply looking at the project in front of you. You are now thinking about the big picture and building for the future. Now, something else unexpected happened towards the end of the year in regards to my business, which is I began taking a step backwards and bringing a few people in. There's one project in particular that I'm working on which required some additional help. So I brought on somebody to kind of be like a junior editor. He's doing some assisting and also some editing. And this made me realize that up until this point, I'd really been operating more as a solopreneur, even though I have officially a filed LLC. I've been operating it like I'm still a freelancer, like I'm a one-man band. People hire me, I do the job, I turn it over. Whereas with this particular project, it was coming in between also trying to edit the Ukraine doc. So I was like, you know what? Why don't I just take a step back, bring somebody in, and try to get some of my time back. So I think one of the lessons that I learned last year is that I need to start really thinking about running my business like a business rather than thinking like a freelancer or an employee of it. So we'll see how this works in the new year. We had some short film success. Two shorts have continued their festival runs, the first being Gabriella by Evelyn Lorena, which there is a link in the article. And the second is Forbidden Fruit by Isaiah Forte Rose, which there's another link in the article. I produced both of these films back to back in 2022, and they continue to have incredible reach. Gabriella was screened at the Smithsonian Institute, Forbidden Fruit at a local chapter of the NAACP, and each have been accepted into countless festivals. Gabriella qualified for awards consideration, which is an amazing achievement for the team. But more than all the accolades, these two shorts mark the beginning of something important for me. Continuing to tell stories that matter. Gabriella showcased the experience of an undocumented woman. Forbidden Fruit gave us a look inside the life of an unfed child. These are characters and stories we don't hear about very often, or when we do, the focus is on their misery. But even though they have large challenges in their lives, they live each day with grace, determination, and beauty. Their stories are a part of all of us. And looking back at both Forbidden Fruit and Gabriella, this taught me to be more patient with creating a project. I think a lot of times, well, at least for me, after I finish creating a project, it's kind of on to the next. Like, we submitted to a couple film festivals, did get in, yay, all right, on to the next. And I think moving on to the next is still important. But one of the things that actually I wrote about earlier in the year and also tried to practice is being more patient and continuing to get it out there. Because even though it has its own run, the work lives forever. So I think this was a good exercise in continuing to push it forward, continuing to put it out there, continuing to make people aware which I plan on doing here in the new year. And there was the Ukraine documentary saga. So since the middle of 2023, I have been working as an editor and producer for the documentary Creative Force, aka UKR. The film showcases artists in Ukraine that are using their everyday skills to support the war effort. In the middle of last year, Alex LeMay, the director, and I were convinced that we had a finished edit to begin selling. But then we had an actual screening. An audience of 50 people were not connecting with one of the major elements of the story, and normally us filmmakers would say, this is my story, I'm going with my gut. But when you hear a reaction from everyone, you have to realize there's a pattern and you owe it to your film to listen. This involved a slightly new approach, but also meant, in a sense, starting over. Now, as the year has come to an end, the film is in a much better place, and we even had a few interested buyers for the new year. Now, just because we started over didn't mean that all of the work that we had done was for nothing. We had a very good skeleton of a story. We basically had like two main stories that were going on at the same time. And there was one story which the audience really resonated with, and the other one that they did not so much. So it was just a matter of taking that one story, stretching it out as far as it could go. There were some things that, I'd actually cut that I actually got to put back in. And then, of course, trying to figure out, okay, what is the glue here? And whose stories that we ignored before can we actually start putting back in? So that's kind of what we have been doing. And I think this was actually a good thing because there were stories that, I really resonated with that now showing people some of the new edits they really resonate with. And it really sucked at the time. It was really a big blow because, we put all this work in. We thought we were done. But I think in the long run, it'll end up being the better for it. Concrete River. I have been writing a script for what feels like a decade. It's called Concrete River, and it's a feature film about an unhoused hip-hop music producer who tries to reconnect with his estranged daughter, but meets a teenage drifter that changes the way he sees the world. It's a story about the America we encounter every day, the part we want to forget or look past, but like Gabriella and Forbidden Fruit, we are going to that dark, hidden place to show people who hope, dream, and build community despite their circumstances. The script received 2 finalist considerations and is currently ranked in the top 20% on Coverfly. I got a deck made for it, hired a casting director, and began building some momentum. But I had to take a little break because I wasn't sure how to proceed exactly. I'd been speaking with my DP, who gave me the idea for the story about making a short version, which has been written, and my casting director began looking for talent to make it. But with a budget of around $20,000 or so to shoot the short, the question remained, was this the right thing to do? Should I simply be focusing on making the feature instead? So there's a lot of overthinking about what the right way forward is for Concrete River, and I found the answers, which I'll reveal later on. And I want to get into what are, kind of 2 schools of thought around short films. Some people think they're a waste of time. Some people think they're a great calling card. There are, plenty of examples of people who took shorts, one being Whiplash and the other one being, I believe it's called Thunder Road. They made shorts and then they positioned those to make into features, mostly because they were either unknown, they hadn't made a feature before, they made a feature before, and it kind of went nowhere. Now, the other thing that I've been wrestling with is that I had a budget made for Concrete River and it came out to around $2.5 million. So for a large studio, $2.5 million is a low budget film. For me, a guy who runs a company, I've never seen $2.5 million before, and I wasn't quite sure if I should be concentrating on making the short and just trying to do that or trying to make the feature. So I basically had to take like several months break in order to wrap my head around it. I had spit out several versions of the short, and which also I think now is like the top 30% on Coverfly. So I think it's a good short and it's got some good potential. But I was really confused. Found the answer, which we'll talk about later. I also wrote a screenplay about love. Now, before the Blended Future Project was a company, it was a blog where I wrote about being multicultural. After a year, I put out a call for short stories by other authors to go on the blog, which I would like to do again later. One of them really stood out, a 20-page true story titled Someone Like Me about a Navy vet's first true love, which also happened to be her first interracial relationship. I reached out to the author and received permission to develop her story into a film, which finally began last year. I tried to write this script on my own, but quickly got overwhelmed. There was simply too much story for me to wrap my head around, so I asked another longtime collaborator, Chris Hall, to help. And we got a great first draft done before the end of the year in just a few weeks cumulatively of work. Now, I originally got the rights to not only that story, but the greater life rights to the author, Sharon Powell, back in 2022. Chris and I have been talking about How to Make Concrete River, which we're still talking about, but then I just showed him the story and I said, hey, I've been thinking about this for a while. What do you think of it? He loved the story. So then we workshopped, okay, how do we bring this story to life? And I said, I really need some help writing this. I've tried to write it. I just kind of stare at it and then wonder, what am I doing? So if you can come in and just help me write it, that would be great. He agreed. I actually had to get an extension on the rights, which I think goes through 2026. So clock's kind of ticking on that. But we were actually able to work really collaboratively on this screenplay. And it was just really refreshing to know that, hey, I found somebody that I can actually write with, because that's very hard to find. Usually when you're trying to write with somebody, either one person ends up taking over or it becomes this battle of wills over whose idea is the best. But we kind of approached it with, okay, we have this story. How do we stay true to it, but also do something different? And what is the best for the script, not what's best for feeding our own egos, which I think also helps that we've been doing this for a while. So egos are kind of out the door by now. And it also helps that I've worked with Chris before. He came in on another short film of mine, Breakaway, as the DP, and really just knocked it out of the park. And I'll probably reshare that short film later on in the year. But we've got ourselves a really good first draft. It's not quite where we need it to be in order to really start, sending it out there. But we're going to continue to work on it. And I'm just really proud of the fact that we were able to get it done so quickly. Last year, I tried a lot of things. I started this Substack, tried consulting, got a few more editing projects, and I came away with the following focus. I want to tell stories about people and culture. Storytelling has always been my strength, and I believe it can change the world. So this upcoming year, I will be doubling down on telling stories that help us understand people. I will be playing to my strengths. One of the things that, every filmmaker struggles with is focus. There's a lot of opportunities that come our way, not only as a filmmaker and a creator, but also as a business owner. So you try and do a little bit of everything. That's why I tried the consulting. That's why, I tried doing a lot of different things. But the thing that I kept coming back to, and the thing that also you have to listen to your audience and what they resonated with, is the things that I make that has the Blended Future attached to it. So I think that just kind of solidified, I just need to continue to find great projects, make great projects, get people involved in great projects, and just continue to push that out there. And I think the more I can focus in on that, the better off not only myself, but the company and everybody who I collaborate with will be. And with that, let's move on to next year's goals. Improving the skill set. I've always continued to learn. Filmmaking is a craft that can always be improved upon. There are more skills I want to learn in the world of post-production, specifically motion graphics and color work. I want to get back to directing actors more, since it's something I haven't done in quite a while. And I want to conquer what has been somewhat of my Achilles heel, cameras. Working with cameras has been hit or miss for me. I definitely know my way around them, but I'm not quite confident in my camera work yet, which is surprising given how great my father was at using them. But the improvement isn't just with the technical skills of filmmaking. To me, it means continuing to connect with people, both old and new, and having great experiences. Continuing therapy and making sure my mental health is in order, and also getting back in the habit of exercise. The skill set is not just about getting better at your craft, but getting the best out of life. And another little wrinkle about my Achilles heel being cameras is that I've actually been a cameraman before. That's what I did in Chicago. It was actually one of my first jobs out of college, was being a cameraman. I ended up working at a company called Intersport, which I shot all of the music and sports news that would go on your Sprint phone if you had Sprint back in the years 2007 to 2009. So even though I was doing all the work, which also include lighting and camera positioning and running sound at the same time, I still wasn't ever quite like comfortable with them. I don't know what it is, but it's something that I really want to work on this year. And as far as getting back in the habit of like exercising, I've done a lot of martial arts in the past, but I've always like gone for a while and then stopped and then gone again. So this year I really want to get back in the habit of exercising so I'm in shape, because I want to go back to doing some martial arts, specifically jiu-jitsu again. But I want to be in shape first before I go, because I've tried to go when you're not in shape and it just makes you hate life. So this year is going to be about continuing my technical skill set, mental skill set, physical skill set, and also just improving overall. This year, Creative Force will be released into the greater world. We are close to finishing the edit of the full 90-minute version, but we also have a pending screening for a 60-minute version at Notre Dame at the beginning of this year. This film is going to be distributed very much in a hybrid model, mixing traditional and grassroots methods to screen it for audiences. With a film as important as this one, we want to ensure we're getting the message out there and making an impact. And as this process moves along, I'll be giving frequent updates on what we're doing and how it's working. Now, actually, this is going to be the first film where we're using what's called hybrid distribution. Actually, it's just distribution. Everything is distribution. There's an old saying that distribution isn't something that you get, it's something that you do. And hybrid really just means doing the way that we all know about, which is trying to find a company that will pay for it to be released in theaters or on a streaming platform, but also doing things on your own. And doing screenings like the one at Notre Dame is an example of doing things on your own. Now, I've been working with the director, Alex LeMay, on different ideas of how we can do things on our own, and we're going to be trying a lot of stuff and also getting recommendations from the company that we're hoping to work with about what works best. But I'll also be reporting that information back here, because I think it's important for everybody to learn what works, what doesn't work for a particular film, see if you can apply these lessons to your own films. And I think this is also another great example of why, especially for documentaries, having two versions of your film is good. One that's the full-length version, however long that is, and also a shorter version, because having a shorter version means that you can actually program an event which features more things. I'm going to go on a little bit of a rant here, but we're now in an age where just making the film is impressive, but not as impressive as it used to be. So when you're thinking of making an event with your film, you have to think of, okay, what else comes along with it? And if you're asking people to watch, an hour and a half to a 2-hour film, then maybe have like a Q&A afterwards that runs really long, and then maybe a workshop or some other type of additional event. That's a long time for people just to be sitting down. So having a shorter version like what we're doing with the 60-minute allows us to have a longer Q&A afterwards, still leaves room open for people who want to see the full-length version, so they'll actually still want to see more. And we're also planning on having a concert afterwards. So you're kind of getting 3 events in one, which is only possible if you have a shorter version of the movie. So especially if you have a documentary, think about having 2 different versions, or maybe even 3 different versions if you can swing it. Maybe you have a 90-minute, a 60-minute, and a 30-minute. Just something to keep in mind. Shooting Concrete River, after months of overthinking, the universe forced my hand. Part of the film involves the creation of a song. Our hero Travis is listening and remixing a song that he wants to give to his daughter Noelle. Now, I frequently make playlists to write. During this process, I stumbled upon the song that was absolutely perfect for how Noelle would sound. The artist's name is Lexa Gates, and I thought it would be amazing if her song was Noelle's. So I asked my casting directors to reach out with no expectations of what would come of it. I was sitting on the couch watching Netflix on my laptop over the holiday break when I received a phone call from a Los Angeles number that I did not recognize. It was Miriam, my casting director, and she announced, much to my surprise, that Lexa's team was very interested. They had seen the deck and wanted to know more, which is, again, why decks are important. The next step is to meet with Lexa on Zoom and see how we get along, but it let me know that Concrete River has to be a priority this year. And this is a lesson and a reminder that if you're trying to get name talent, actually if you're trying to get any kind of talent, I highly recommend getting a casting director. Now, there are things like breakdown services that you can use in order to find actors on your own, but to get really good talent, you need people who have access to that talent. I can think of the films where I didn't have a casting director and the ones where I did. And the talent that I got with a casting director has always been much, much better. They are so worth the money that you will spend. And finding a casting director actually isn't really that hard anymore. If you go on the CSA, the Casting Directors Association's website, you can put up job listings. List, what the project is about, how much that you have to spend, and casting directors will reach out to you. And that is a way, maybe you're not going to get A-list talent, but you're going to get talent that, they know what they're doing. They've done this before. You're just going to get better talent for your movie, short or feature. We're actually in the process of trying to get even more talent for this short. My wish list would be Corey Hardrict, who coincidentally I used to edit his ex-wife's YouTube channel, Tia Mowry, and also Nico Parker, who you may know from The Last of Us, and I think is going to be in the live action version of How to Train Your Dragon. So we'll see how all that works out, but kind of the first dominoes to fall in making this short are getting some talent attached. I've got an offer to get fiscal sponsorship, which means anybody who wants to invest in the movie gets a tax write-off. And then we can begin our outreach campaign. We're going to try to reach out to brands, nonprofits, maybe even some government officials who are trying to tackle the issue of homelessness, and try and use the short to build some momentum and a groundswell of support, so that way we can lead that into making the feature. I've got some ideas of also tying it in with Forbidden Fruit, since that's, it's kind of got a similar theme around people in unfortunate circumstances. That one's about a kid who's struggling to find enough to eat. So we'll see how all that goes, but I think this is just the first sign of many that the Concrete River short is going to be something that I have to make this year. And now I'd like to put a face to the name. I've had a Blended Future YouTube channel for a little over a year, but it's mostly been abandoned. As we created more press around Gabriella, the channel gained a little traction, mostly from the trailer, which has been seen over 3,000 times, I think, by the time you'll listen to this. So again, I think this is a sign that I should pay more attention to creating videos and using YouTube to grow a presence, not just as an advertisement of what I'm making, but for the same goal that I have with these articles and what you're listening to now, to provide a blueprint on building a non-dependent ecosystem for filmmakers. And this is going to be something that I'm going to ramp up slowly. I think part of the issue of why it was abandoned before is I was trying to do too much too fast. I thought that, I would make a mini documentary that would come out every month, but that involves, finding people, interviewing them, editing. That is a full-time job. I'm also having a little bit of a redesign and upgrade for the branding of the Blended Future project. And my plan is to have those coincide so they're ready to launch together. But I'm going to take some time to really be mindful about, okay, what is actually realistic to accomplish? I still want to do some of those mini documentaries, but I also want to provide some face-to-face time with me on camera, sharing some of the same knowledge that I'm sharing right here. So this will take time. This won't be something that I do right away, but I think much like Concrete River, it's a sign that it has to be done. Which leads us to notes from the field. I know that films can create empathy and change the world, and they can do that by presenting the truth as it is. But we also need to have the truth and the data in order to make that happen. Deja Henry, a frequent collaborator and a fellow Substacker, yes, that is a word, and I have been speaking about how filmmakers need a space to get inspiration, share data, and information in order to build their own ecosystems. She mentioned how scientists will share their findings in order to advance the medium because it's for the greater good. But filmmakers are conditioned to hoard what we know in order to make sure we're getting the best deal. Deja and I want to change that and use Substack as the platform to do so. We're still figuring out how it will work exactly, but as soon as it's ready, we will let you all know. And we've had some initial thoughts and brainstorming. Our initial thoughts are a monthly meetup that, may or may not feature a guest. We want to make sure that we're getting data from people, like, if somebody has a large YouTube channel, we get the data of what their analytics look like, how often they're posting, how is that leading into income. And we like to take this data, extrapolate it, examine it, and be able to share it with whoever is a part of this so that they have something to work with, and also give assignments for people who want to go down a particular route. So that way they can do experiments, see how it works, report back to the rest of the group and see if that's something somebody else wants to take on, or it's just something we can learn from. We may do a little bit more. We're still talking. Again, this is one of those things that is going to take a little bit of time to get off the ground. And we want to do it in a non-stressful way. We want to do it in a way where we don't feel like we're obligated to do it or it's too much work, which is the problem with a lot of podcasts is you end up just hunting down for guests and it just ends up being the only thing that you do, where this is more of bringing in people to give value to a community. So when it's ready, we will announce it fully and everybody will know. Which leads me to the road ahead. There's more ahead for me, but these are the major points. The key focus is to continue building and connecting. The world tells us that it's every person for themselves, but the truth is we're stronger together than we are apart. I was just speaking with Alex LeMay the other day, and we both said that now is the time to say yes, within reason. Find your focus and say yes. Say yes to growing. Say yes to learning. Say yes to helping. Think 10 years ahead and reaping your rewards and just keep pushing. Take it from me, you'll be pleasantly surprised with the results. And even though I've listed a lot of things that I'm planning on doing this year, I'm going to take this slow. None of this has to be done all at the same time. Having goals for the year means having the year to accomplish or start the goals. First thing is I'm just going to try to get in a rhythm of doing these podcast episodes. Writing these articles doesn't take me very long. I want to get the system down to where I can also record these podcast episodes and read-alongs in that same systematic fashion so it doesn't take me as long. And then we'll just slowly ramp up. I think a lot of times I have an idea and I just want to execute it right away. So I just start doing it, but then I don't think about the system of doing it. So this year I want to, add one thing at a time. Same thing with doing the YouTube channel, one thing at a time. First comes the podcast, that's audio only. Then we'll add video. And we'll just slowly ramp up so it's something that is systemized, it's easy for me to do, and I don't have to think about it so much. So that way I can look forward to doing it. It'll be something exciting that I get to do because I know how long it's going to take rather than, oh my God, I have to do this thing. And everything else will come in time. Releasing the movie, making Concrete River, that's all going to take time. And we're just going to do things day by day. Slow growth, as they call it. That is the theme for this year, is accomplishing a lot slowly, methodically, and mindfully. So I plan on doing more of these. I hope you learned something from what I accomplished last year and what I'm looking forward to doing this year. I hope to meet some more of you as I'm building all of these things, and we'll hopefully get to also place faces to names when we launch the Notes from the Field. Thank you for listening, and I will talk to you all next week.